Well, welcome once again to another edition of MEMA Supplier Insights. I'm Mike Jackson. I have the pleasure of leading strategy and research at MEMA, the Vehicle Suppliers Association. Very pleased to welcome Jason Kaufman, U.S. Automotive Supplier Lead at Deloitte Consulting. Jason, great to have you with me here today.
Thanks, Mike. It's a pleasure to reconnect on another year of the Barometer, and it feels like it was just yesterday we were in Vegas together, kicking off innovations and what was happening to start the year, and now we're already at the end of Q1.
Absolutely. It's amazing. We've already got the first quarter in the books. And so what's amazing here, the first quarter topic here on production planning and electrification, no question, there is just a tremendous amount of activity in this space. Look forward to discussing with you the results here. And so thanks for your support. First point of business here is to look at the results. So coming from the fourth quarter last year here, in the throes of the UAW strike impact, lots of pessimism then at 39. We've actually seen some improvement here to 43. And yet the key point here is that for 8 consecutive quarters, the Barometer Index, the supplier of our member executives on their 12-month outlook, has come in negative. And so that really kind of underscores this compounding pressure on the industry. Some thoughts there just to kind of set the stage?
Yeah, I think the VUCA world we live in, right, with the volatility, uncertainty, it's just continuing. It's the norm, and I think within our industry, everybody's still challenged with, how to move forward. I think as we get into the production numbers and planning numbers going out to 2030, I think volumes are pretty strong for us, at least in the U.S. But we're seeing Europe, being a little pessimistic, and Asia being pessimistic. So from a global standpoint, and since we're a global industry, even though there could be some, light at the end of the tunnel for us here in the US, there's still other challenges that we need to navigate. So I'm not overly surprised that, some of the pessimism that's continued for the last couple of years.
Yeah, no question. And you're right. If we look at economic factors, we'll talk about that here in just a minute. One other point I just want to emphasize is that this is the first time we've actually integrated responses from both our light vehicle and commercial vehicle supplier members. And so, you see here to the left, you see light vehicle, the supplier barometer index comes in at 45. On the commercial vehicle side, it comes in at 41. A little more concern there relative to the outlook. And so important just to take note of. So let's continue on. I think if we look at our, the slide here that underscores what are the greatest threats to the industry, I think this is a pretty significant shift here. And so poor sales of vehicles and programs supplied. If we look at where we were in the fourth quarter of last year, again, that the greatest threat had everything to do with UAW strike impact and what that would mean going forward. Now, obviously, we do have, some of those costs of the new contract that carries forward. But poor sales of vehicle and program supplied, I think many suppliers anticipated, well, wow, I've won the new business. I've got, some EV programs in my portfolio. And yet, in many ways, some of them have underperformed and by a lot. Can you speak to this? I mean, certainly some suppliers have been quite successful. Others have been facing some new challenges.
Yeah, I mean, going back to, the pressures for our industry, right, with the federal government, really pushing, BEV adoption for consumers. We just completed our 2024 consumer survey of just consumer intent. And on the EV side, we saw a decline year over year on the number of people that are even considering EVs, whether that's BEV, HEV, or plug-in hybrid, the whole gambit of EV. So I think, there's still a positive from a standpoint of about roughly 30% of consumers are looking at BEV. And if we're looking at last year's sales of BEV and EV, it's not at that 30% point. So I think there is at least a positive to look at. People are considering those purchases. But as you highlighted and the supplier barometer highlighted, I think a lot of suppliers are feeling the crunch of programs that they invested in. One, quite proud of that. Shareholders are looking to the CFO and CEO during, their quarterly reviews of saying, okay, how are you doing on these new programs, and making sure they're resilient and viable into this new shift for the industry. But in the same light, when the programs aren't selling at the volumes that they expected, how much money did I put in? When is my ROI going to turn? There's a lot of, again, uncertainty just on where that falls. So I not shocked that that's at the top of the list of some of the concerns, and probably some of the pessimism just as we're entering this year.
No question, no question, and a really nice recap too, because I think look, we've faced a lot of these issues in terms of labor availability, obviously prospects of higher interest rates. We know it's a really heavy capex landscape right now, and so let's continue on, and we'll look at production here. This is an important one, and we ask our members each year, "Where's your break even?" And what's really helpful is that after last year, break even at 13.9 million units, break even here rose marginally to 14 million units, and yet the production forecast slated for 15.7 million units here, and maybe even with some upside. So really quite positive on this front. Really a step in the right direction with a continued kind of stability here, and having that stability is quite helpful. This clearly paves the way then for suppliers to be able to make some investments here.
Yeah, no, it's strong. It's encouraging for sure, as we reflected in the opening comments, just on the global challenges of some of the volumes here in the US. Looking at global data, out to 2030, they're expecting the 16 and a half, I think even encroaching over 16 and a half million units, as we get closer into 2030, which is great. 39% of the production is supposed to be in that BEV EV world, but with sales, I think if I remember correctly, just over 60% of sales in across the EV out to 2030. So with the EPA announcement this week of softening a little bit, recognizing where the economy's at and where the consumers are driving us, and leaning more on hybrids, it'll be interesting to see how those numbers adjust, and again how OEMs change their production plans just to meet EPA expectations, and with some of that softening, does that get tweaked a little bit as we look forward?
Absolutely. No, great point. I mean, obviously it has implications, right? For, and maybe helps, bridge, the, product plans, and then, helping, to provide, maybe a little bit more focus on profitability here, as we continue to move, toward higher levels of EV adoption. So with that, just a quick one here on looking at Class 8, the truck forecast. So this is from our members, and they're indicating that the weighted average here, at 24 coming in at just under 270,000 units, and then here rising marginally here to 225 in 2025 to 285. Interesting here. That's a pretty meaningful contraction, and so that is really another kind of element of to focus on, that our members are dealing with. Volatility, certainly stability here on the light vehicle side, but obviously has big impacts for product planning, and for looking at the Class 8 sector. If we look then as well in trailer is also facing some significant contraction, coming off of a much more robust level of volume here in 2023. So pretty significant, significantly weaker expectations here. Looking at just under 250,000 units here for this year, before moderating. With that though, I just want to highlight here, if we look at production planning and internal issues, if you look over the next year, what are the following internal issues you'll face as you meet required levels of production? And here I think is pretty, again, more of the same, but skilled trades, labor shortages, a significant pain point there. And then looking as well, inventory carrying costs, hourly labor shortages, and continued disruption, supply chain. Obviously onshoring, the focus here, trying to help shorten those supply chains, and yet not easy, right? So a range of pressures here.
Yeah, on the labor side, a lot of suppliers we work with, I mean, looking at their employee populations over 55 and 55 to 75, I mean, it's an aging baby boomer demographic, and as they continue to retire, attracting new talent into the industry, particularly around skilled trades, which high paying, great career paths. I think we're still challenged a little bit to get the millennials, which is the next large population for us in the US that'll prop us up, for our economy in a lot of good ways, but getting them to be able to participate in of a challenge for us. So clearly something we need to continue to work on.
With that, Jason, I really appreciate your insights. I want to thank Jason Kaufman, U.S. Automotive Supplier Lead, Deloitte Consulting, for his support and your insights today. Thank you, Jason. Really appreciate it. Great comments and insights as ever.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate the sponsorship with you and Mima, and look forward to the next one.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate you watching, and look for us next time here at Mima for Mima Supplier Insights. Take care.